Hey there, and welcome to this mega upload of what I'm dubbing Season 1 of Content Capsules and Pop Pockets. It's at once a more convenient way to marathon these things and an attempt to use hours and hours of hard work to help me rack up enough watch time to qualify for YouTube partnership, which is doable through regular uploads and short uploads, but you need like a couple million of the latter in order for it to stack up enough for you to be like, yeah, money please, but whatever. Share this around if you think people in your circle would enjoy this sort of squirrel-brained pop cultural criticism that I do on my channel. A bit of context before you dive into this little mess of mine. Content Capsules started as an experiment in condensing my style and MO into 1-minute shorts. I've had a tendency to be a bit rambly and meandering, which while I've gotten better at making that funny, or at least entertaining, I've nonetheless wanted to challenge myself to be a bit more concise, finding that magic formula of opinion, rhythm, and memetry. My first and to this day most viewed capsule about wait, hold on. Scratch that, it's the lo-fi one now, thank God. But yeah, that first capsule showed me that this format could work. What I eventually found a bit limiting was the subject matter, which at first was aimed squarely at YouTubers and their strange, contained subculture on here. Enter Pop Pockets, which is pretty much the same thing, with a broader net to include media consumed by people who actually go outside. The Pockets also gave me a means of returning to my older love affair, writing movie reviews, which I used to do in high school and college through Facebook and the Rotten Tomatoes reviewer tool, neither of which is particularly relevant to anyone these days. Anyway, what you'll see here is every entry up till the time of this recording, including the ones from 12 Days of Capsmas. I've already got more in the works, both audio that I put on the back burner this past year while recording other ones, as well as freshly written scripts that just need to be recorded. I hope you all enjoy, and thank you again very much for watching.
These people love fantasy. Economic collapse, anyone?
If you're 16 or older, you have to concede that iDubbbz has had one of the wildest evolutions in the space of YouTube commentary. While he's definitely got a hefty stockpile of snark and roasting, some of which hasn't aged particularly well, the work put into his classic period allowed him to build a sharp eye for bullshit as well as a sensitivity to the weirder parts of the internet. Content Cop remains a rewatchable attack on hypocrisy and ego, but his modern rants and documentary series take the language of internet memes and commentary videos and applies it to something comparable to mainstream satire, social critique, and journalistic filmmaking. Yeah, but he's a simp and his wife Junior. Cupcake. Like I said, 16 or over. He went from dunking on cringy startups and baller brains to progressing the medium he works in, and even organized one of the most legitimate new media spin-off events in recent memory, Creator Clash. All of which, in my opinion, sets an example that up-and-comers would be wise to follow. Also, I met him once. He smelled nice.
Sorry. Oh my God!
Remember that really weird time Shane Dawson was cool again? I'm not really interested so much in what's happened since then and how he's fallen in and out of everyone's favor, but I do want to briefly revisit how he convinced all of us that a new era of YouTube was upon us with an overlong, overproduced, overmanipulative, overexploitative series of drama videos that we nonetheless called documentaries. You already know the Paul brothers, and if you're like me, you hate that about yourself. You wish you could sever it like a coyote trapped in a snare. But this saga about the inner psyche of Jake in particular created the illusion that online tabloid was meeting pop cinema before our eyes. Jeremy, John's reviewed this shit. Now, credit where credit is due, the off-roading sequence was exhilarating. It stood on its own, yet was also a viscerally tense metaphor for the chaos Shane attempted to analyze and resolve, which he kinda did. Then they broke up at the end, rendering most of it pointless. Watch Minding the Gap instead.
We have to fully grow up, and it's gonna suck.
I love the holidays. Everyone's got that handful of movies they watch with their family. There's those movie nerd pics that skirt by on taking place on Christmas or in the snow. You've got those classic Rankin Bass specials to fall back on. And then you've got relevant content on YouTube. Reviewers doing their usual thing in Santa Claus hats and the like. But I present to you the most underrated of this particular sphere, Destroying the Little Panda Fighter. This stupid waste of time where Brits bashed up some copies of a shitty knockoff sparked a major happening, a monumental battle of expression and copyright abuse, with Goodest Lad I Hate Everything at the center of the chaos.
Because ain't that a kick in the head?
I watched back this whole thing recently, and it unironically makes me nostalgic for a time where creators of all persuasions rallied against corporatism and exploitation, showing them fat cats up top that they couldn't just do whatever they want. Boy, did that shit change, though. Merry Christmas, everyone! Merry fucking Christmas.
Ain't that a kick in the head? You see, kid?
To watch Bo Burnham's work from beginning to end is to see the American dream happen right before your eyes, flowering into an idealized being of immaculate voice and dexterity, right before it turns around and says, "Don't fucking do it."
Give up.
Your hard work and talent will not pay off.
There's a lot of material that I'm just really embarrassed by.
Rather than posturing his achievement and upholding the status quo with such blowhard nothings as, "You wouldn't want to be me," Bo uses the skill and perspective he's racked up this decade to encourage media literacy, empathizing with modern youth in the face of corporate chaos and the commodification of our collective soul. He advocates for progress and takes weighted shots at false prophets while having the sense to step aside and say he himself is unqualified to serve certain roles. Even if I genuinely think he's one of the most emblematic creatives of his generation, what's most refreshing, ironically, is his cultural unease, skepticism, and indignation towards the death of our hopes and dreams. This hopelessness gives me hope. It's the damnedest thing. I'm having an identity crisis. Ever since 2015, I've seen fellow pop culture junkies, academic sweethearts, and aesthetic legends pump out lengthy, feature-length, or even Lawrence of Arabia-length epics, focusing on whatever the hell they want, to major acclaim and much consumption. It's enough to make one motivated to try their hand at a similar style of content. Good fucking luck. You see, the algorithm doesn't like you in that form yet, that of a librarian or barista or pipe-smoking mid-century dweeb that just so happens to love Hanna-Barbera and getting potted up on Plant, meaning you're not in any rush to sink days or weeks into something with little guarantee of return. You know what the algorithm does like you in, though? Vine 4.0 form, candy-coated form, lo-fi waifu form. Of course, I'm by no means unwilling to pivot to the latter, but I'd be lying if I said it isn't hella weird to me. So even as I crank more of these out, here's hoping I hold on to my roots and make all those prior bursts of 9-hour labor worth it. Pregnancy joke. Dax Flame made a YouTube movie. You heard me correctly. One of the most enigmatic internet creators took a crack at dramatizing this very website's creation in the same vein of Social Network or any number of Silicon Valley pictures. And you should all watch it. Yes, this free-to-watch, low-budget movie with some audio inconsistencies, hit-and-miss writing, and this strange part with missing footage is essential viewing. Because while yes, all that stuff is in there, it's also in half the stuff I've made, so I'm not one to fucking talk. But this is a bizarrely endearing passion project that clearly comes from a place of love and intrigue for the subject matter. Certain stretches are legitimately beautiful, there's a tangible vision for the story, and Dax's lead performance, unlike other triple threat anomalies like Neil Breen or Tommy Wiseau, is actually pretty damn good.
What's your sign?
What? I'm sorry if it's weird to be coming by on Thanksgiving, but yeah, what are you doing here?
Perhaps down the line I'll dedicate a longer video to this imperfect little gem of a movie. You know, if I ever remember how to make content that's more than 60 seconds long.
I feel like at a time like this, where a video like this can be created, there's somewhat of a need to stop for a second and ask ourselves, what the hell is going on?
Meet Or. This sweet Jewish lad first caught my eye with his uniquely visual approach to YouTube commentary. Very much in line with several creators I've watched for a while, Pinely is a box-headed host whose dad was probably this guy.
He's the box man.
His hand-drawn approach made for an addicting and entertaining format that could frame anything from YouTube drama, op-eds, to media reviews. Though he's gradually shifted away from the style as of recent, what's gone through the roof is the analytical prowess and attention to detail within his subjects, which is important when you're covering such shenanigans as the over-commodification of YouTube, conspiracy theories, and, of course, the rising tide of anti-Semitism. Orr's lax bro cadence meshes seamlessly with what I read as a pretty authentic concern for social issues and the role of the modern influencer, and I have no problem admitting that this has inspired a few recent videos of mine, and for that, I'm very thankful. Check his stuff out, it's rock solid. Well, after nearly a decade on my part, all kinds of artistic shifts and stylistic tweaking, an odd existential crisis here and there, I've finally reached 1K subs on YouTube, and it looks like they sent me a little commemorative email. Let's see what it looks like. Why, banana, but why banana?
Nooski,
no.
We always knew this day would come, and we hope you did too. You're doing amazing work, and we couldn't be happier for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you couldn't.
Now go,
I don't. Please stop. We live in a pretty crazy world. For all the towering leaps we've made in medicine, efficiency, and mass production, it's pretty absurd that many people, especially first world people, don't have access to essential health care. And it's inspired me to participate in my country's democratic process, and I can't think of a better way to start than by getting off my ass and defending God among men Mr. Beast for helping all those blind people. I mean, can you believe anyone anywhere would think that this is a bad thing, that he used a small percentage of his own endlessly replenishing money to help those in need as a piece of hyper-sensationalized content? Yeah, he could platform key figures and causes who understand social science and infrastructure rather than making a pageant out of our hellish lack of social utility. But it's so hard to make an entertaining video out of that, especially one where everyone cheers at all the amazing stuff I'm able to do because I have money! The takeaway, people are mad that blindness got cured. Nothing else to be mined from this discourse. God, I fucking hate it here. I even cut him some slack on Monday. I was trying to be charitable. All he had to do to keep it was not answer to criticism like a fucking child. The first thing anyone with more than 3 brain cells will notice about the Bill Clinton kids' reception is the hearty mixture of, haha, look at them all getting trolled by his persona, with, yeah, but he's kinda right about the thoughts, though. Textbook, flat circle, I'm so fucking sick of this cycle. The number of dumbass kids who nonetheless have technical talent and even charisma getting man-bent into annoying little goblins of meme speak and reactionary politics is staggering. It all feeds into building the broader cults of personality, the ecosystem of producing and reacting to this particular sensibility, memeing their thrones of bullshit into spaces of real-world influence. Then the little Tony Montana LARPers get to milk whatever beef they get into for maximum notoriety and engagement. In this modern landscape of the indoctrination of kids into anti-Americanism, I personally think there's a special place in hell for those f***heads who cultivate teen followings and ensure wave after wave of shock jocks and trolls who sap the entire internet of intelligence, humor, and compassion.
Do I really give a f*** about all this internet shit? Not really, it's f***ing entertaining as f*** though.
A decade after its release, I finally watched Magic Mike, a film that, while the butt of many jokes that don't take into account the stripper's sexuality, was directed by indie darling Steven Soderbergh. The mysterious man-meat movie that shocked the world is actually packed with gritty, low-budget touches that elevate the story, itself informed by Channing Tatum's real-life experience as a Tampa stripper, to a richness more comparable to Rocky or Saturday Night Fever than Showgirls. I don't know, I haven't seen it. In any case, this movie is really good, which may sound shocking to a lot of you, but when everyone's done pretending they weren't raised on the metro fraternal antics of sports films and startup fantasies whilst casually watching man parts fly in Private Ryan, private, they'll find an artfully produced character study of entrepreneurs in a marginalized profession. Oh yeah, and McConaughey's a trip.
You are the husband that they never had.
Hard wreck, go watch.
Oh, okay. The 20s?
You don't want to know what I have to do for 20s.
You know what? I don't.
You know what? Let's drink these and I'll show you what I do for 20s.
That's okay.
If the original recalls another soulful drama, in part influenced by the lead actor's struggles to make it in the entertainment business, Sly did a porno and that's fine with me. Magic Mike XXL follows suit in being a breezier sequel with a bigger budget, funnier jokes, and much more creative strip routines. While Part 1's got it beat on dramatic heft, Part 2's got a getting the band back together brotency, a wider range of locations, musical-like placement of dance numbers, and an exciting roster of surprise guests. What I'm really getting at is that it's the Blues Brothers of stripper flicks, and to me, that's f***ing cool. Watching these films back to back has made me stoked for the final film in the trilogy, which at the time of recording this is coming out soon, and I can't wait to go watch it even though a lot of the cast won't be back, which does make me wonder who exactly they're gonna get to replace them with. Salma. I'm going tomorrow.
How much for the Cheetos and water?
The third and at present final entry in the Magic Mike series is a mixed bag of fresh ideas and missed potential. Credit where due, there's something pretty meta going on with the main story, the continual reach for a more sophisticated version of its lowbrow roots, while still carrying over the first sequel's MO of sensuality and adventure. In this way, that pomp is admirable, and the spectacle of the dancing is still great. What's less than stellar is how well these newer elements deliver on dramatic payoff, especially given that Soderbergh's back to direct. The threaded camaraderie of the first two movies is sorely missed, and while many of the new characters are fun, they're not really given enough time to cook. By the end, it really just felt like two phenomenal set pieces, bookending an appealing yet meandering middle. Still though, Channing's as effortlessly charming as ever, he pretty much is this character at this point, and his chemistry with at the very least makes it a watchable flick. Fun time at the movies overall, enjoyed it with my friends, I just needed a bit more meat.
Man meat.
It's raining, hallelujah, it's raining.
Recently, I stumbled across the most apt, the most encapsulation of why I can't stand the current mold of millionaire comedy podcasters. In a 20-minute cringe fest that supposedly led to their breakup, Tim Dillon, that's the inferior version of Dylan, by the way, reprimanded his then co-host, Ben Avery, in what has to be the most tippy-toed, passive-aggressive way imaginable.
When you act in a completely inappropriate way publicly to an ally and a business partner, and I correct you, you then attack me. I did not want to talk about this even publicly.
Then why did you fucking bring it up?
Now for me, this sums it all up. These warriors of free speech, these deep fryers of the snowflakes will insist week after week that comedy plays a sacred role that revels in our imperfections and helps us deal with life's darkness and pain. Just don't do it in a way that might potentially hurt your stability and clout, because if you're not careful, you might lose this dream gig of shitting on political correctness. Brilliant. Supreme self-awareness.
You're the aggressor.
What a projection.
From the invention of automatic weaponry and the splitting of the atom to the double-edged sword of automated work, play, and warfare, technology has a tendency to be at once impressive and absolutely terrifying. Now this anxiety has crept into the art world thanks to the adaptive learning of artificial intelligence and all of its 12, 13, 14-fingered horror. Personally, I harbor a lot of skepticism and angst towards this commodification of creativity and the anti-intellectual philosophies expressed by some of its defenders. But I will say that there are some exceptions, and right now the coolest one I've come across is this AI-assisted psychedelia, whose creator mapped these mind-melting landscapes with the timelessly trippy music of Pink Floyd. This is one of those rare instances where a computer has the power to create something that human hands simply couldn't do alone, and it's far more in line with the leaps forward of ILM and Weta than whatever the f this is supposed to be. Enthusiastic Rec, go scope out that channel, just stay wary of Amazon. That disco classic that'll never not be a bop happens to be the theme song for one of the most slept-on comedies of the 1970s. I knew it existed, I knew Rich and George were in it, and that was about it. Little did I know I was missing out on a free-flowing time capsule featuring non-stop radio jams, interlocking stories, and a hyper-diverse lineup of stiffs, clowns, and wannabes. The amount of social vectors they touch on is impressive for the time, from poverty and dating to gender identity and criminal reform, as well as Pryor's show-stopping turn as a pimp of the Lord. All of these personalities clash in well-written, very entertaining scenes, including what I now believe to be one of the sickest burns in all of cinema.
Would you please get out of my face, you sorry-looking f***? Who you calling sorry-looking? Can't you all see that she ain't funny? She's just another poor example of how the system has of destroying our men. Honey, I am more man than you'll ever be, and more woman than you'll ever get.
Good stuff. I need to vent something that's gonna sound like a flex, and I guess it is in some ways, and that it's probably all gonna come out to being built different. But as a creative who's tried his hand at so many things in the past decade, the impulse to pursue a project can be devastatingly inconvenient, because I'll be moving along on, say, a new video, a lengthier one since those take a lot of time and focus, and then as a result of watching a good-ass movie, or hearing a good-ass album, or reading a good-ass essay, or rewatching a good-ass episode of Game Grumps Fire Red from like 10 f***ing years ago, my brain will be like, abort current thing, write movie, compose prog EP, animate funny boys a majority of the world around you has grown out of.
Oh, come on! No! Greg!
So it'll either bring the project to a screeching halt or make the remaining push behind it snail slow and penis-punchingly painful. You know what? Alliteration's fun. F this capsule. I'ma write a poetry zine instead. Zines are red. You can make them about anything. I need to vent something that's gonna sound like a flex, and I guess it is in some ways, and that it's probably all gonna come out to being built different. But as a creative who's tried his hand at so many things in the past decade, the impulse to pursue a project can be devastatingly inconvenient, because I'll be moving along on, say, a new video, a lengthier one since those take a lot of time and focus, and then as a result of watching a good-ass movie, or hearing a good-ass album, or reading a good-ass essay, or rewatching a good-ass episode of Game Grumps Fire Red from like 10 f***ing years ago, my brain will be like, abort current thing, write movie, compose prog EP, animate funny boys a majority of the world around you has grown out of.
Oh, come on! No! Greg!
So it'll either bring the project to a screeching halt or make the remaining push behind it snail slow and penis-punchingly painful. You know what? Alliteration's fun. F this capsule. I'ma write a poetry zine instead. Zines are red. You can make them about anything. I'm a level with you guys. I'm pretty stoked for the Mario movie. While I'm not a big fan of Illumination as a dominating force of marketing and like Facebook memes, I mean the minions need no explanation there. I'm also not gonna act like I didn't at least enjoy Despicable Me 1 and 2. I haven't seen 3, nor that one with the letter by the Box Tops and a guest appearance by Pete Townsend. That all said, their proficiency with bright cartoony visuals is malleable to all sorts of IPs, and assuming the full movie looks as good as the trailer, even if it's not great, Super Mario Bros. Could prove that the supposedly kiddie franchises of Nintendo are viable feature-length Hollywood movie projects. We may finally get Zelda or Metroid or hell, Mega Man movies that lean more directly into the darker shades of Pixar, the sci-fi fantasy hybrids of Studio Ghibli or Avatar Studios. I'm not expecting brilliance, I'm not expecting a rival to any of those other companies. I'm expecting cool-looking shit based on stuff I grew up with. And post-Plinkett cynicism be damned, I'll take that shit. The world's on fire, and I miss my Wii. It's broken. The title of this series is a composite of two things. One, content, as in cop or vigilante or nuke and all those other TMZ for edgy little boys videos that do gangbusters. And two, the capsule review, an artifact of media that predominantly killed trees. Practitioners were critics on that publication's payroll, usually specializing in a specific medium. Before their show, Siskel and Ebert wrote a ton of these for the Chicago papers that they worked at, as did Leonard Little Rascals fanboy Malton, and perhaps the most known capsule writer in music, the self-professed dean of American rock critics, Robert Christgau. The proto-melon.
I use academic words and I say f a lot. I sometimes do indeed assume, affect, a vulgar tone just to piss people off. Yes, I do.
Besides all that, though, capsule is just a cool-ass word and can refer to this capsule or that capsule or these capsules or those capsules. Capsule Corp. Bulma's got the coolest job in the world, and I want to work with her and her dad and flirt with her and her dad nonstop if we're on the same shift. I love the Boondock Saints a little less each and every time I watch it. Unlike many films that you first catch in high school, plaster the poster on your dorm room wall, and continue to sing its praises at karaoke bars, weddings, and sporting events through the rest of your days, Troy Duffy's cult revenge thriller has many cracks in its Celtic armor that result in me being like, man, that's still sick as hell. And then immediately after, wow, that's pretty try-hard. Understand this, though, even as I find myself growing out of its shtick each time I watch it on St. Paddy's Day, it's worth noting that I still watch it on every St. Paddy's Day. It's a uniquely weird film with some memorable images and a cast who's clearly having a blast playing their parts, and it's every bit as watchable as a lot of other schlock that I'm passionate about from the 80s and 90s. Someday I hope to dig into its finer details, but ultimately I make a point these days that I do indeed see it as schlock. Worse yet, Catholic schlock. Gonna regret trying to cram all this into 60 seconds, but that's about as much time as this topic deserves. Society. Not the word, not even the idea, the meme. That meme. Anyone that spends more than an hour online a day knows exactly what I'm talking about. I know exactly where it started, too, during the climax of everyone's favorite movie that could only be your favorite movie if you didn't know the 70s happened, Joker, with Joaquin and De Niro, just as Captain Incel himself is about to shoot his spiteful white-hot load all over his now abandoned surrogate daddy figure's face. How lovely that we indeed live in a society where it's hilarious as hell that he said society, that everyone memed the movie and moreover the word to shit for having said society before anyone's seen the movie about hashtag society, while at the same time embracing this onslaught of pop nihilism where he said society. But also it do be like that, boys. I'm so sick of these degenerates and these loose women slinging poon for fun bucks. Gary Glitter, okay hand. Gary Glitter, return to monkey. Gary Glitter, return to tradition. Gary Glitter, we live in a society, alright, an anthropologically sick society. Doctor's prognosis, you're all a bunch of dweebs. Lots of masterful albums are turning 50 in 2023, but for many, nothing can eclipse the semi-centennial milestone that is every dad rocker and his son's favorite t-shirt. Memes aside, Darkside is so played, so acclaimed, and so synonymous with old people music that it can be easy to go in with sky-high expectations in a manner similar to The Godfather, or Citizen Kane, or Avatar: The Way of Water, directed by James Cameron. But to me, if you go in with a level head and an open mind, you will be treated to one of the most flowing, cohesive experiences of the time or any time, haunting melodies, exciting song-to-song dynamics, and some of the most crisp production put to tape, all with just the right amount of cutting-edge instrumentation to be timeless, remaining psychedelically jazzy in the most Floyd way possible without becoming full-tilt capital P proggers. It's progressive music without being too esoteric for casual listeners, and it blends so many textures and tones that I'm in love with while chewing on immortal themes of, well, mortality, listlessness, and vain materialism. If you haven't played it, do it today. I don't think you'll regret it. If Dark Side of the Moon transcends time and space in being so smooth and accommodating, Todd Rundgren's A Wizard, a True Star is of near equal power by being the exact opposite. By embracing then state-of-the-art synthesizers, with genre hopping no doubt indicative of what he was on at the time as well as what he was on at the time, Todd crafted a record that sounds so chaotic and nutty in such a 70s way, while simultaneously being an undeniable influence on every decade of pop since. Other progsters of the 70s followed his example, 80s synth rock took a few cues, and of course, many an indie bedroom musician is indebted to Wizard's largely one-man production and psychedelic zigzags of genre and tonality. The quirky art pop of Ariel Pink, the vibey lo-fi of Joji, and of course the progressive soul of Frank Ocean have Rundgren DNA all over them. Blonde in particular, with its admitted Beatles Brian Wilson roots, lines up with Todd's MO so much that somewhere in this mix, there's a sample off of this very album. Game sees game, art begets art, and brain f***y psych pop shall reign forever. I'm gonna make a direct appeal to all the listless teens and young adults who, through no fault of their own, might need a guide of sorts, a confident role model to pump them up and empower them to improve their lives. As someone who's been in a similar spot, if not exactly the same, my heroes are the Star Wars and Muppet guys. Hardly top G material, unless the G stands for George. If you're gonna be a disciple of one of these cats whose words are easily set to fast cars, city lights, fat stacks, and other assorted stock footage, I implore you to at least choose one of the hundreds of dudes out there who aren't currently charged with sex trafficking. While I generally vibe with not agreeing with everything a person says or does, I usually apply that to rock stars and actors who cheat on their wives, to writers who wrote a classic or two before going full tilt Fox and Friends levels of batshit, not some chest-puffing dweeb whose knowledge not only can be found in a million other places, but moreover places that don't make others question how much you actually give a shit about sex trafficking charges. Christ alive, we're not asking for the moon here. Video game parodies and fanfiction have been an internet staple since the early 2000s, so much so that it can be kind of overwhelming to find truly exceptional work. For me, one of those gems is A Fox in Space, a Star Fox project by animator and Renaissance man Matthew Gafford. This tribute to Nintendo's iconic space shooter is an ingenious blend of post-bebop cool and the rough-around-the-edges Americana of Ralph Bakshi, or dare I say it, Mike Judge, all filtered through Gafford's unique interpretations of familiar characters and jaw-droppingly dynamic voice work. You are not going to believe that something this polished was largely produced by the same guy, let alone the guy doing most of the voices.
These guys just didn't want to take any chances. Where are you taking me?
The first episode dropped over 5 years ago, so when part 2 finally dropped last month, I made sure to watch it on a TV for full immersion, and boy was it more than worth the wait. Put together, the show so far is just under an hour, so when you've got the time, sit back and enjoy one of my favorite things to come out this past decade. No cap. Cocaine Bear is a movie that knows exactly what it is, yet also kinda tries to be more than that. Confusing, contradictory perhaps, maybe. But that was the experience I had when me and some friends of mine saw it in theaters last month. Beyond the Stranger Things light aesthetics of its music, costuming, and overall scope, this ensemble comedy flops casually back and forth between the polish you'd expect from a AAA actress turned director and the more niche sensibilities of Grindhouse and other midnight guilty pleasures. The result will either entertain you for riding such a weird fence or leave you cold and craving a more committed submersion into the schlock. I fell into the former category, but I won't deny that there were aspects of it that were kinda half-baked that end up at odds with the cooler setups and character beats.
Have you ever done cocaine? Why do you ask? Just wondering if it has long-term side effects. For the bear, of course. If it just did a little bit.
Well, it could create a habit for the bear.
Watch it high, watch it drunk. Hell, watch it on cocaine if you so choose, I won't tell. Even if you're 8. I might be going to jail now. So the Lo-Fi Girl channel did something really cool recently. Not too long after an April Fool's bit where she took a much-earned nap, the stream teased some fresh lore with a glowing window in the distance. Eventually, a mysterious stream went public, featuring some retro room fits, a fish tank, and an ambiguous timer counting down to some sort of surprise. Once the thing hit 0, he arrived. A new character in the universe formerly known as Chilled Cow. Currently dubbed Synthwave Boy by devotees of lo-fi records, the stream signals the brand's full embrace of vibey, forward-thinking electronica through this cooler-toned bedroom that's every bit as cozy as its older sister. I think it's really cool and convenient to have this spiritual sibling of aesthetics and musical genre living right next to what I've already dubbed a premier vibe station of the internet. I'm actually listening to it as I record this, and I gotta say, there's indeed more than one way to chillax and study. Oh wait, I'm not in school anymore. Hell yeah, dude. Have fun with your homework. If you're interested in an older video on Lo-Fi Girl that I did about a year and a half ago, you can find a link to it in the pinned comment below. Poor Ringo. Despite credible drummers the world over insisting he's actually pretty good at what he does, he's still the eternal butt of any Beatles-based joke. His dopey grin at the Kit, his many appearances in really weird movies, his inevitable awkward boomer posts on TikTok or Instagram, his foray into MS Paint. He's just a goofy man, and yet this very fact is what made it oh so gratifying to make the following discovery. He's the best actor of the four in A Hard Day's Night. As he endures prophetic pummeling and roasting through Richard Lester's influential classic, he emits a charisma similar to many French New Wave protags, wandering the streets in a listlessness that I unironically find endearing. It's a warming little surprise in an already amazing movie, and it made it all the more shocking to see him regress to a piece of wood as the Pope in Listomania.
You are more to be pitied than punished, my son.
My dude, what the hell happened? Probably drugs. I mean, it was a Ken Russell jaunt.
Latte pronto!
Latte pronto!
Upon hearing about Fool's Paradise, I was already excited to see a Charlie Day jaunt where he's on triple duty, quadruple duty if you count the dual character meme.
Take a look at this guy. What about him? He's a dead ringer for you! The man don't look nothing like me. I mean, look at him. He's too short.
What I wasn't at all prepared for was the premise, which, as someone who's super nostalgic for the silent brilliance of Chaplin and Keaton, appealed to my craving for a wordless protag who's prone to physical gags and antics. On top of this collision of modern culture and timeless clownery, I also see some similarities to Hal Ashby's Being There, where Peter Sellers plays a TV-raised savant who by sheer unwitting conviction becomes a philosopher in the elite crust of society. As anyone who's followed him for a while knows, Charlie's a man of culture, so I doubt that these parallels are a coincidence. Here's hoping this directorial debut brings some new life to these classic movie tropes.
Who are you really, Latte Pronto?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this flick. Self-made men, movers and shakers, social disruptors. They're as American as apple pie, really, dating back to the Industrial Revolution and endlessly lobbying, corner-cutting, and union-busting ever since. Beyond how inherently creepy it is that moat-guarded oligarchs determine the social priorities and living conditions for countless people they'll never even know, what gets me is their core identity. To keep close to what I know, which is web media, Chris Stuckman's main life objective is to be a filmmaker, which he's leveraged through criticism and YouTubing. I look at this and I say, mood, my dude, I'll keep tabs on you, because you seem cool and we want similar things. Whereas Logan Paul's MO is to be Logan Paul. The through line, of course, being to make things happen, and to constantly reinvent himself, impulsively shoving his underqualified schnoz wherever he wants, all while turning to the camera to say, hey, why not me? You know, as if he's still remotely relatable to me or anyone else I've met in my entire life. If you're sick of my bitching about these type of people and capitalism, fret not. I'm just getting started. I enjoyed Super Mario Bros. Exactly as much as I hoped I would, which isn't saying much, mind you. It ended up being undercooked in its storytelling once it got to the middle chunk. The flow, in my opinion, was compromised by packing in nods to as many games as possible, and the overall sense of risk only felt real a handful of times. That said, there were some standout performances from Jack Black as Bowser, who even gets a power ballad throughout the film, and Charlie Day as Luigi, who's as flamboyantly paranoid and concerned as I wanted him to be.
Do you think I know every human being with a mustache wearing an identical outfit with a hat with the letter of his first name on it? Because I don't.
Plus, the loving dynamic between the brothers, he calls him Lou and I love it, was the most endearing part of the story when it was there. I actually love the beginning and end because of how they interpreted Brooklyn, their family life, and even some NES-era Easter eggs they peppered throughout the city itself. Again, this thing's largely mediocre, but the elements that I was going for in the first place were handled more than well enough to entertain fans of the games. I say, rent it when it's on DVD. Remember those? The last auteur, the last movie star, the last rock star, the last YouTuber. Please shut the f up. There's a plague in popular journalism that gets prevalent every couple of years, that fluff that tries to pry the end of an era angle out of really menial shit. Sure, certain figures being the last of their generation, say a platoon from a war, or a band, or a movement in painting, film, or acting, do carry a sense of finality once they pass away, but the amount of blatant attempts I see to exploit existential dread and our insecurities about time are the lowest hanging fruit imaginable. Yeah guys, this internet comedian that me and all my friends watched is probably gonna move to do something on TV or pivot to a new medium entirely. This platform of thousands of creatives is truly on its dying leg. This isn't new. The crippling fear of something ending is ironically timeless, and the more we glorify things that already happened, the more we clutch onto these ultimately replaceable figures, the harder it's gonna be to live your life into the future. By the way, who do you think's gonna be the next last YouTuber? My money's on Schlatt.
He turned his asshole meter up to 50.
So on top of the many classics celebrating their golden anniversary this year, last week marked 10 years since the release of Daft Punk's Random Access Memories.
And the Grammy goes to Random Access Memories, Daft Punk.
We are Random Access Memories, some of us more random than others.
Feelings around this double LP have gotten stirred up recently due to it retroactively becoming Daft Punk's final full-length project, and while there's certainly a few understandable ways to feel about this pulling of the plug, I'm still ecstatic for the deluxe edition they've dropped in commemoration of its 10th anniversary, which includes demos and outtakes that give further insight into the music's creation, plus a Japan-exclusive track that up until now could only be dug up on YouTube, and an unreleased collab with Strokes frontman Julian Casablancas that's now being dubbed Daft Punk's final single. It all adds up to an exciting way for me to revisit one of the most formative albums of my early adulthood. Maybe I can get into that in the future. In the meantime, happy listening, and lose yourself to dance. Want to build your YouTube following but don't know where to start? Well, you've come to the right place. Follow these 3 steps and you'll be Gucci. Step 1, get a decent mic. All the major audio peeps have affordable USB types. Just pick your favorite. They all do the same thing. Step 2, have tasty visuals. With free stock vids and a video downloader, you can make all sorts of content that completely masks the budget that you're working with. Some people draw or commission avatar stills to give it some personality, but I prefer to just use game footage, especially stuff that hypnotizes passive teenagers and tired dock workers who happen to like Gmod builds in CSGO. Third and final step, pick an oppressed group and one of these 3 script trees. So long as you start the video off by saying you don't hate them and arbitrarily write not to bully them in your description, you are golden. Repeat step 3 ad nauseum for 5 or 6 months, and before you know it, you'll be making bank. What about you? What's your process? Did I miss any key steps? Let me know in the comments, and I'll probably just ignore you and go back to drinking Monster and trolling Instagram models on dating apps. Peace, cunts.
Sing with me. Put your money into a Roth IRA, buy large cap index funds, put a little bit of money into bonds, and on top of that, if you want to support people that make videos and stuff like that, consider buying products and not just giving them money like a homeless person, because
much has already been said about Johnny Depp's debt to classic rock stars in developing his character Jack Sparrow, particularly Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards, who of course would later cameo as Jack's father in further sequels. Over the last few years, though, I've developed a theory in part inspired by director Gore Verbinski's reverence to Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, which can be seen in costuming, shot composition, and the overall weirdness of the Pirates franchise. The Jack Sparrow run is so widely imitated and immediately recognizable, it was the first thing I thought of while rewatching a favorite of mine that preceded Curse of the Black Pearl by nearly 40 years, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Look at Eli Wallach's Tuco scanning this endless gravesite for buried treasure, and tell me you don't see it. Now, it may or may not have been a conscious choice on Johnny's part. I'd love to know if it was. Either way, though, I love how 2 of the most eccentric characters in their respective eras move through their roguish lifestyles in such a similar way.
We got robbed, and this how I know I ain't shit. They took everything but the merch, nigga.
The current way to find your new favorite comedian is through Reels, Shorts, and TikToks, which is exactly how I found Niles Abston. The man's got dozens of popular bits going around about race relations, civil rights, and his upbringing in Mississippi, lifted straight from his 2 rock-solid free-to-watch specials on his YouTube channel. The first was a gig shot in a living room, which I came to find out is actually a popular spot in LA for up-and-coming comics. The second was produced in a proper club setting, but is also opened by an animated short that showcases his offstage talent and sensibilities. The depth of which can be seen in a dope callback to Gil Scott-Heron, which I don't plan to spoil. Niles has a laid-back stage presence that gives his act a mellow, flexible flow, and I highly recommend it to people looking for some fresh comedy. Go check him out.
You gotta be 5'9" to donate sperm. 5'9". I walk up to there thinking I'm about to make a quick $600. Lady turns me away like I'm Gary Coleman at Six Flags. This shit was...
I'm a longtime follower of vlogger turned indie folk sensation Dodie, which is a story for another time, mind you, but this investment is what made me aware of a new project she's started with fellow artists Greta Isaac, Orla Gartland, and Martin Luke Brown. Dubbed Fizz, this mysterious band snuck quietly onto my Instagram feed with their out there fits, this weird promo animation, and cryptic messages that could be found under their posts. We are Fizz. You are the dog. Do I get a say in which one? Because I'd much prefer the Greyhound over whatever the hell's going on over here. My own suspense was quelled by the release of their first single, High and Brighton, which I can happily report is a slam-bang piece of psychedelic Britpop. What could have just been a quirky side project for those involved seems to be an honest-to-God collision of all their talent that's left me salivating for the full album due out this September. Go give it a listen. Shit amps you up to get litty, even if you ain't a pretty. I'm good at wordplay. Both Tron movies are interesting in that they're both far from perfect, yet are so tied to the cutting edge of blockbuster filmmaking through their visual effects, sound design, and musical score that their cult followings are fully justified. I'm due for a rewatch to see how much I enjoy them in the 2020s, but I can confidently say that I'm craving the one that's currently in development. And just what kind of update leapt out of the headlines to amp me up for its release? Anti-strike fuckery. Now, to be completely fair, director Joachim Ronning has every right to be frustrated about the shutdowns triggered by the Hollywood strikes. His controversial weigh-in accurately paints the void of work and passion currently ailing countless artists' lives right now. Where he drops the ball is understanding who's at fault. Put simply, it's not the actors and writers and other laborers demonstrating, it's studios and executives willfully ignoring or denying their demands, feigning bewilderment and outright bragging about the money they've saved since all of this started. I mean, I'm one of like 12 people looking forward to a third Tron movie, dude. Please don't make it weird by blaming the wrong people.
Am I still to create the perfect system? Yeah.
You read this right, they're bringing back an old favorite. When I was growing up, Harry Potter was that thing that half my friends read all the books, saw all the movies, and played a good chunk of the games. For me, though, the closest I ever got to that was with a way cooler franchise, Scott Pilgrim. Before I saw the cult favorite movie adaptation by Edgar Wright, I borrowed my friend's box set of all the graphic novels and read them all in the span of a month. I was floored by Brian Lee O'Malley's mix of humor, satire, and coming-of-age drama strung together by an endless supply of video game references that puts in perspective just how lame this thing was in hindsight. While the film version is rightfully adored for retaining the spirit of the books and showcasing the madcap style that Wright would refine in later movies of his, this upcoming Netflix show should scratch the itch for those of us who missed smaller moments that didn't make the final cut, and will no doubt appeal to connoisseurs of quirkier animation that's come out in the time since. November can't come soon enough.
Lesbians?
Oh god, I'm this movie years old. In 1993, Nintendo took a shot at a live-action version of Super Mario Bros., starring Bob Hoskins as Mario, John Leguizamo as Luigi, and Dennis Hopper as not Bowser. Me and my buddy Trivial Theater did a watch-along to this gem back in winter of 2020, which solidified its status as one of my favorite guilty pleasures of its time. According to a few publications, though, there seems to be enough interest in the film that a 4K re-release is currently being planned for theaters in Japan. Personally, I think this would be the perfect kind of special engagement for things like Fathom Events or even local art house theaters that program older films weeks at a time. Maybe, if dweebs like you and me are vocal enough, distributors stateside will go along with the trend as a means of further capitalizing on Mario movie mania. See, Universal, I know my shit. Gamers and kids love alliteration because it sounds like illumination, not a banana. This pocket ran out of steam like 3 sentences ago. Mario movie, bring it back. Call me Shigeru, we'll do lunch. Longtime viewers of mine know that my adoration for the Paul dynasty knows no bounds. I'm constantly gassed and jazzed and tickled by their gargantuan grasp on new media, finance, and youth culture. Which is why I'm so stoked for Logan's continued insistence that you should take his hot takes on popular cinema seriously. As he has no problem saying every other hour of the day, Homedingle's something of a storyteller himself, a maestro of narrative mastery whose meteoric rise shows no sign of stopping. He snags traffic and sales by the thousands, tailored for people who wear shit like this unironically. If that's not artistry, I don't know what is. So heed my man's warnings about Nope, which didn't justify its thematic twists about those who exploit spectacle and cynicism. Cut through the noise of Oppenheimer, so talky and uneventful that you should walk out of the screening before the important stuff happens, and instead soak in this wholly American populism as much as you can so that when my boy inevitably runs for president in 20 years, we'll all have zero reason to be shocked. Since his untimely passing in 2008, Heath Ledger has remained an elusive presence in a category of film I call good shit I still haven't seen. Thankfully, I can cross one of those off the list, a very fun one at that. A Knight's Tale is what happens when you take a pretty straightforward template, more so akin to an underdog sports film than a King Arthur or Robin Hood type meme, work in an electrifying cast, a villain who's only missing a twirlable mustache, and weighty, wince-inducing action scenes. Oh yeah, then throw in classic rock. This is the most polarizing part of the movie, where people either find the period mishmash distracting or charming. I'm in the latter group, of course. On top of being a fan of this genre in general, I think its blunt placement in the story gives the film a unique identity. I'm in full agreement with critics like Roger Ebert, who thought A Knight's Tale's story and execution gave it an old-fashioned sense of fun and adventure. A pop fantasy that doesn't take itself too seriously, yet remains satisfying to watch all the way through. Find some Keith fans and stream it over a couple of beers. It's a blast. One might say, it'll rock you. Back in 2017, I did a retrospective on Smosh where I tried to analyze the appeal of their older stuff. By the way, it's dog water. My hair was short, I was still finding my voice, and I verbally berated a guitar like a freak. Go back. You f***ing behave back there, bitch. Instead, go over and watch Joel Haver's response to Ian Hecox and Anthony Padilla reuniting and rekindling their involvement in Smosh.
They're in a position to uplift this high-effort short-form content.
He hits the nail on the head that Smosh and other YouTube pioneers built themselves up on a foundation of attainability. A low-budget, lo-fi, just f***ing around with the bestie kind of energy that, while not without production value, didn't strive to compete with mainstream TV like many successful channels ended up doing. Joel's second channel has been a consistent source of motivation and insight that's clearly tethered to a passion for filmmaking and the joy of creating your own stuff, dropping as much reverence to people like Scorsese and Cassavetes while not ignoring what inspired many of us to pick up a camera when we were kids: YouTubers. Anyway, go watch that vlog. It's a chill time and he's a sweet lad, and I'm sure he smells nice.
Bye-bye.
I'm a sucker for that nebulous subgenre of the 60s and 70s called Baroque pop. Stuff that incorporates orchestral elements while still adhering to digestible runtimes and hooks. Every singer-songwriter after Lennon-McCartney dabbled in this approach at some point, yet Velvet Underground co-founder John Cale's Paris 1919 sets itself apart from the pack with a unique mix of poetic lyrics, period imagery, and a more matter-of-fact vocal delivery. Cale's name is more directly attached to proto-punk artists like Patti Smith and the Stooges, or the experimental art rock of Brian Eno and Lou Reed. This makes this decidedly reeled-in, sophisticated record stand out from the rest of his discography. It's much more meditative and cinematic, planting you right in the vibe and iconography of the time and place it's named after. And I gotta say, that title track has one of the most infectious choruses I've heard in a long time. Give this thing a listen if you're low on hoity-toity hanky-panky know-how boomer bops to sip bourbon to. Say that shit 3 times. Activision Anthology on the PS2 and Game Boy Advance introduced me to the games my parents played growing up, in some cases with their own parents, like with Kaboom. When I was 8 or 9, my mom got a refurbished 2600 with a few dozen cartridges for her birthday, and that sealed my fascination with retro gaming from that point on. But now, after countless all-in-one mini-console releases, Atari has announced a modern recreation of this iconic gaming system, which will include a multi-pack cartridge with 10 classic titles, and will even be fully compatible with original 2600 and 7200 releases. No 5800 for obvious reasons. This has amped up people like me for reasons beyond the novelty of dusting off those old carts and playing stuff we grew up on, because if mass-produced, readily available hardware will be coming out again, there's nothing stopping Atari from going one step further than even the most respected retro consoles tend to, giving developers full license to make modern software. If we started getting smaller indie releases for a 60-year-old platform, this could set a new precedent for the bigger companies to follow beyond digital emulation. Wishful thinking on my part, perhaps, but what a cool f***ing wish, am I right? There's an art to making a stupid comedy, having that courage to pull out all the stops to make something so broad and juvenile that for every tasteless, lowest common denominator joke that'll age like milk, there's a jewel of brilliance that becomes part of the cinematic canon. This is my way of saying that it was just as surprising to me as it was to everyone else that I only recently watched Zoolander for the first time.
What is this?
The bits that I was already familiar with hit harder in the context of the full picture, this slapdash collage of Hollywood piss-take and political espionage. As far as smart, stupid movies, it's definitely true to the time and place it was made in, on the bleeding edge of early 2000s idiocy, while also being right before that really bad thing that changed everyone and everything. Ben Stiller did a great job fleshing out what was initially a one-gag character, providing a world for fellow comic actors like Will Ferrell and Owen Wilson to sink their teeth into. And for David Bowie to cameo as himself, rocking that long-haired joint mid-dilf phase. Any movie's better when you throw in Daddy Bobo as a dilfy Wilfy. The people have to know. Man, when you're starting to take root in your 20s, having endured a decade and a half of collecting whatever it was that society convinced you to obsess over, you start to believe you'll never get sucked into financially compromising hobbies ever again. Damn it. Yeah, I'm starting to really build up the vinyl library. Some folk, some indie, a lot of who, as you'd expect, generally rockist, which is to say, white. But I plan on offsetting this with some R&B soon. I need some more 88 Rising representation beyond George Miller. Not that George Miller, the Joji guy. That only took 3 years to open. But yeah, it's safe to say I'm coming into my own as a vinyl guy. So far, I've only hit one major snag. I don't have a record player. Before I moved out, I made liberal use of my parents' suitcase-style Victrola. Now that I'm working on a proper twink cave, though, I feel like I can justify getting something a little beefier. I'd personally like some kind of all-in-one, so I can also take advantage of the handful of cassettes I've gotten. Though I suppose I could play them on the shoebox recorder. Except, well, it's a shoebox recorder. You might dabble in music. I dabble in music, and thus far, dabble is about as much as I can say. Because while I get all proud of my loopy GarageBand bops or my calluses finally coming back from a few weeks of uking and tarring in the apartment, I'm merely one scroll away from obliterating any ego I was building up with clips like this. That's been my relationship with experimental guitarist Ichika Nito. Apologies if I butchered that, for half a decade. Dude's catalog was the first of its kind that I happened to come across, and while this kind of playing may be all over the internet, it's rare for it to be so consistently appealing, yet so varied in its technique and discipline. In some videos, the playing speaks for itself, others, the novelty of the guitar is what grabs you, even as the playing's still fire. Other times, it's the drip in the smolder. I'ma be f***ing real. As a straight dude, this cat's f***ing beautiful. Every noodle, photo op, and proper music video just emits this energy where this dude's doing exactly what he was put on this earth to do. God, I love music. Controversial take, I know. As actors, writers, and other workers in the industry continue to strike, it's going to be mad important to support independent productions as a means of challenging Hollywood's bouquet of inequity, nepotism, and oligarchical apathy. Basically all the words you can say without outright calling them piggly f***ing assholes. Which I'm not calling them. Anyway, I finally found a project I can get behind, a short film featuring actor, writer, comedian Niles Abston with his friend and director Christian Banda.
I've always wanted to star in a movie and make movies with my friends, like an Adam Sandler would, Seth Rogen, like those type of guys.
I started as an executive assistant on MTV, put my time in, busting tables, PAing, APing, freelancing.
98 Honda sounds like it'll be an entertaining genre blender if done right. Currently, the plan is to shoot the first 15 pages of a feature screenplay as a proof of concept for potential studio backers. So be sure to head over to its crowdfunding page for more details and to make a pledge if you so desire. Let's make this thing happen.
Filmmaking is expensive. We not Nepo babies.
Sure ain't.
Which is why we're in here.
This past weekend, I was able to attend some screenings and panels at the 20th Annual DC Shorts International Film Fest, hosted by the Alamo Drafthouse. It's awesome enough to get boozy milkshakes and burgers brought to you at a first-rate cinema. It's something else entirely to get it in tandem with dozens of short films from all over the world. In the 2 days of 5 I was able to attend, I got a sociological blast of inspiration, insight into the craft of filmmaking and writing, and the general appreciation of art. And while I highly recommend that patrons and creators the world over participate in next year's fest, it's also not quite over for this one. Now through October 1st, you can get access to the many showcases that were screened last week. Individual packages are available, as well as an all-in-one pass that you can get if you're really hungry for some short films. The quality on display here is more than worth it, and any purchases will definitely help future events. Genuinely hope y'all enjoy what you find, and I also hope you continue to support independent film communities. Oh, and congrats to the WGA. What a f***ing dub. So this month is wrapping up with a grim reminder of just how deep a hold reactionary baller types and capitalist edgelords have on the coming generation of young boys. That being said, I'm still hella proud of the blowback chumps like Sneeko and Tate are getting from more authentic social critics in the tubersphere, not least of all my man, Corey motherfucking Coleman, founding member of the legendary Spill.com and its modern-day successor, Double Toasted.
Ignorant people love being ignorant. That's why they don't want to get better.
For those who don't know, Corey and his team touch on a wide array of pop culture that merges newer trends with an old-school public access energy, yet he's proven time and again to not be scared of calling out bullshit when it comes to social issues. I've been a fan of these guys since I was in middle school, and after a decade plus of growing out of certain things and admitting when a lot of stuff I liked wasn't the most compassionate or hell, sometimes even downright harmful, seeing dudes like Corey appeal to Zoomers like this gives me hope.
This is nothing to aspire to. Even if you're 10, 9 years old and you're looking at this and it's okay, I will tell you straight up to your face, you are a piece of shit. And you're gonna be a bigger piece of shit when you grow up and do this kind of stuff.
Well, it's official. In his campaign for his upcoming film, Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese has brought up the not at all divided matter of superhero movies.
It is happening again.
While I still stand by the idea that even popular blockbusters have the potential to inspire and change people's lives, I've gradually come to see eye to eye with Marty's industrial angle on Marvel movies and the modern blockbuster zeitgeist, which is why when page after page swoops in making this stale, wacky, sloppy old dunk where he's championing Nolan, who's made 3 Batman movies, I gladly call BS. Because while he's saying to support Christopher Nolan, he's speaking to the critical and financial success of Oppenheimer, and I would also assume Barbie. They're a duology, duh. But Homeboy sees this automation and sterilization of the art he loves as a hard L. He's acknowledged that superhero movies can be very good, but that doesn't mean he has to brush off the green screen hellscape that's starting to build up like so many others seem willing to do. Support diversity and quality in cinema and stop looking for hypocrisy where there is none. Towards the end of 2021, indie rock darlings Dr. Dog, who I've covered before on the channel, concluded their farewell tour as a touring band. I say again, as a touring band, meaning they did imply that they'd remain active as a studio venture. In the time since, Toby Lehman released his debut solo record, Military Applications, while Scott McMicken has kept very busy with several projects, including a new album, Shebang, filed under the Ever Expanding. Both of these releases lean more heavily into their respective voices and sensibilities that you could hear in their contributions to Dr. Dog. On that front, though, I've seen a bit more activity on the band's Instagram feed. Casual uploads of building, partying, and laughing that's no doubt defined their kinship from the get-go. Prospects seem good for another release, and I can't wait to hear what sort of sounds come from the good doctor now that the pressures of touring life will no longer affect their output. I do believe they've got more up their sleeve.
Wow.
Back in the late 2000s, my obsession with filmmaking and movies was really starting to ramp up. I was slowly venturing outside of my comfort zone of the major blockbusters and visiting the classics that paved the way before them. Action movies, older sci-fi, retro comedies, and even super niche independent work from early newgrounders and YouTubers. That last part's what I'm touching on today with James Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd and Cinemassacre. While his game reviews and filmmaking journey clicked with me almost right away, his fascination with horror films was something completely fresh for me. Now, I wasn't in a rush to watch anything that would f with my developing brain or gross me out, but with his Monster Madness series, I was nonetheless able to develop an understanding of the genre's history, influence, and eventually, appeal. If you're a wee baba like I was, and still am in some ways, nope, no thanks, nah, I'm good. Fuck you. I recommend his yearly October marathons of horror reviews. Who knows, it just might convince you to dive headlong into a fun and important sector of cinema.
It's Cinemassacre's Monster Madness.
Last week, I went to an outdoor screening of The Exorcist at a friend's place. It was a great way to rewatch a classic in honor of the late great Friedkin. Pour a can of pea soup out for a real one. But I want to talk about that theme song, which was actually the title track for prog rock musician Mike Oldfield's album Tubular Bells. Once that thing started playing, I was once again reminded of something I notice constantly, yet immediately forget to chronicle. But no more, says I'm documenting it right here, right now. Fellow weebs, listen to this iconic little sting of 70s horror and tell me you don't hear it. I'm willing to bet that Death Note's composers were greatly inspired by this track for their theme for L. It's got such a mono a mono energy, which is completely flush with the good and evil confrontation of Damien and the devil. Big ego versus big brain, emo versus savant, Danzig versus Wilson. Anyway, this all really just plays to my core mission of pointing out how one thing reminds me of other thing. More to come, or not, I don't know. For Halloween, there's no shortage of spooky, or at the very least, somewhat demonic jams to rattle your skull to. Well, it certainly helps that every other pop act gets charged with satanic messages in their music.
You're all boring Karens, by the way.
Plenty of heavy metal, punk, and indie bands have genre touches that will melt seamlessly into your next monster mash. My hard rec for this Halloween day comes from none other than one of Hollywood's true Renaissance men and future father of my children, Ryan the Gaz Gosling, Dead Man's Bones. A project started in 2009 with fellow musician Zach Shields, this slept-on group has only released one album thus far, recorded with a children's choir founded by Flea. Yeah, that Flea. Sound-wise, it's a unique fusion of retro rock and roll, modern psychedelia, and a gothic folkiness brought out by some eerie vocal performances. It's a great album that transcends its novelty and is so effective that it's influenced a handful of other underground groups, while select tracks have even been featured in movies like The Conjuring. Stir this into your witch's brew this year. So, a Pop Pocket I was pretty proud of, absolutely tanked, probably because I ended up dropping it at a weird time of day on Tuesday, you know, Halloween. Man, Halloween's so dope. I kind of wish I could keep putting stuff out that's tailored to its vibe, so I think I will. I mean, why not? The holiday trinity of Q4 isn't really a trinity, if we're gonna be real. Thanksgiving. Ooh, turkeys, football, genocide. I mean, let's face it, it's just an excuse to eat a ton at grandma's till you do it all over again in December, in way cooler fashion, I might add. F it. Until I say otherwise, you're gonna get more spooky or pumpkin-adjacent content, including a re-release of that Ween Pocket this Sunday. There's no way in hell it'll bomb again as long as I release it at the proper time. Plus, I'll have an excuse to keep watching classic schlock and listen to more horror punk. Halloween, Sloppy Seconds Edition. What I've seen so far of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a topsy-turvy roller coaster through all sorts of genres. Phantom Blood is a gentlemanly melodrama of vamps and maidens. Battle Tendency is like Raiders if it f***ed Street Fighter. Stardust Crusaders kind of feels like a Tolkien-ish epic starring John Travolta and fellow Fonzie friends, and it just gets weirder and weirder from there. Focusing on part 1 though, while I was looking for some footage for a previous pocket, I noticed some on-the-nose references in its staging and aesthetics. The pop art color and movement synonymous with the series often makes me overlook its reverence to classic horror films, specifically those made by Hammer. This jot right here made the whole thing click in my head, where Jonathan's had enough of Dio's shenanigans and yeets him over a balcony, which I think is lifted right out of Frankenstein starring Peter Cushing. Picture this, an alternate universe where a young Christopher Lee played Dio, Cushing could have been Zeppeli, Elvis could have been JoJo. That would be funny. And then you could have Tiny Tim as Speedwagon. Actually, nope, never mind. That's just scary. Nick Cage as Dracula. What a punchline to an enticing trailer that humanizes and millennializes the plight of horror's #1 ball washer. If only the movie it advertised matched that level of fun from start to finish. Sure, it hooks you with its homages to the Lugosi movie. There's heaping spoonfuls of atmosphere and above-average action direction that falls somewhere between MCU and Robert Rodriguez, but once you hit that latter half, most of the freshness starts to evaporate. Now, I could forgive the over-reliance on, yup, that's me, you're probably voiceovers, the forced meet-cute relationship between Renfield and Awkwafina, and Ben Schwartz saying "f*** every 10 seconds, but all of that remains persistent even after the darkness goes away, the fights become Twilight tier throwing matches, and the bite is taken out of Dracula's sense of menace. Still, Cage is Cage, gives you what you want when he's there. Nicholas Hoult is consistently likable, and the fusion of violence and comedy works often enough that if you stream it in October, it'll get the job done. Fun time, even if it's frustrating if you leave your brain in.
Renfield.
Come on, Ryan!
July of last year, a video dropped where future father of my children, Ryan the Gosling, had to fend off some super pushy fans, and I use that word loosely, on his way out of a Good Morning America appearance.
Everybody's pushing me.
Calm down. Behind you.
Now, having watched this back a dozen or so times, once at half speed with the lights off, one thing is abundantly clear. Ryan Gosling definitely had to tell a dude to chill out as he was leaving his appearance at Good Morning America.
Whatever the next step is, the video of them making out, that's what's gonna happen.
Can I just say, so what? I mean, at a point, aren't we kind of done with it? Okay,
No.
Go live your life, you know? No. Why are we invested in it?
Why were we invested in Victoria?
Remaining Beatles, Paul and Ringo have completed an abandoned John Lennon track, which they initially attempted to produce in the mid-90s with bandmate George Harrison and ELO's own Jeff Lynne. Using AI-assisted techniques, they were finally able to separate John's voice from the demo's piano playing, allowing them to track additional layers of audio unimpeded. While generally well-received, the song's gotten a fair helping of valid criticism regarding their approach to the mix and perhaps overproducing what should have been a more stripped-down piece to stay true to the original recording. That said, I personally think it's about as good as the newer tracks from the 90s anthology box set. Like those, it certainly doesn't rank among their finest work, but it's a goddamn Beatles song. It's lush, it's polished, and it's catchy. Plus, if you play the single on a streaming service, it segues directly into their first release single, Love Me Do. That contrast is as beautiful as it is haunting, and brings their legacy into sharp focus for this generation. Give it a listen if you haven't, then check out the far more impressive mini-doc about its production.
Love, love me do.
For my 30th birthday, me and my partner went to a humble, hole-in-the-wall theater to see Bottoms. I had heard pretty solid things about it, the trailer did it for me with its mumbly dialogue, but we were in no way prepared for how much of a deliberate, whiplashy piss-take the flick would be. Staged in a high school where few, if any, kids are actually played by teenagers, all the adults are dipshits, and none of the straight jocks are played even a little straight, what initially feels like a Gen Z stab at the quintessential, quirky, coming-of-age dramedy descends into pulpy chaos and a total disregard for the tropes that frame most films like it. If you were to take flakes of Superbad, Mean Girls, and But I'm a Cheerleader, lit them up in a dirty bong shaped like John Waters' head, then mouthed your favorite quote from the movie The Warriors on the exhale, the cloud would look like Bottoms. Even if it's a movie that could only be made now, if you know what I mean, I admire the balls on this thing, the courage to be snarky, stupid, and ugly in its own way, while still providing a handful of moments of genuine truth and emotional power. See it when you can. I'm pretty damn sure it's gonna be a cult movie soon. I'll be the first to go to war for the validity of black and white movies. Not just the classics that time and again you'll hear people say they can't sit through without color, but also modern films that make the conscious choice to shoot in monochrome. It's just a beautiful way to frame a story and further remove a work's need to be realistic, even as robots and aliens level a city for the millionth time. What may get me in hot water though is the take in the title. Yes, I kind of vibe with films that are colorized after the fact. Fun fact, I only recently got to watching It's a Wonderful Life all the way through 2 Christmases ago with my mom and my grandma. And frankly, the glowing, gold-tinged Technicolor tones of the thing made it feel cozier, more fairy tale-like and out of the same portal that would take you to Oz. I'll probably watch it again this year in the original black and white since it'll play more to what was captured in camera, but I nonetheless find the first version memorable or at the very least fascinating. If George Miller can rationalize 2 versions of that one movie I still haven't seen because I'm too busy rewatching Master of Disguise over a glass of Windex, what's the harm in having 2 widely available versions of a holiday classic? Judas in The Black Messiah is there to remind you that the only way to get the West to give a shit about someone is to reference a Jew with a Spanish name painted as a white savior in a brown nation. All to convince someone out there that the murder of a 21-year-old activist might have been a really bad thing. His affiliations make this murky, of course, as he was part of an armed gang of militants who'd host unnerving meetings and rallies without having the decency to wear a badge. Now, if your gut reaction to this account that's been all but confirmed by the FBI, along with myriad other threats to our way of life, is to recite the flaccid creed of anti-intellectualism that is, there's bad apples on both sides, just pop in a copy of your favorite reactionary propaganda, and return to your precious fantasy world where liberty somehow means pledging allegiance, valiant demigods die in slow motion, and all that stuff that may or may not have actually been as glorious and triumphant as it was made out to be. Was. Or alternatively, we stop pretending that the first day of training involves your instructor saying, "Remember, private, question everything, including me. Now tell me your favorite color." Anyway, the movie slaps. Have a nice f***ing Thanksgiving. It's unfortunate that the discourse around this one has been mangled into a 3-way battle of, this is a Christmas movie, this isn't a Christmas movie, and whether or not this is a Christmas movie is some terminal film bro virgin shit that we should all make fun of, because a way more productive conversation is whether or not it still holds up. On one hand, yeah, it's the late 80s and you get a glimpse into the mind of America itself in the late 80s by watching it. You can find plenty of essays on that on your own damn time. Because I'm just here to say, yeah, it's still that f***ing good. The production is top-notch, every major performance has charisma and spades, the set pieces are a masterclass in action choreography and movie editing, and the protagonist is one of the most iconic and well-realized of his time.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Never in a million years could anyone have guessed that a sequel to a book whose movie version starred Frank Sinatra would be adapted into one of the most influential action movies ever made. And it is a Christmas movie.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew?
Underground pop might sound like an oxymoron, but it's actually the most apt way to describe some of my favorite music. A prime example can be found in the work of British songwriter, poet, gardener Martin Newell. His songs mesh tasty pop melodies with a grimy, working-class perspective. While his work has racked up enthusiastic praise over the decades, especially that filed under his band Cleaners from Venus, you can credit his initial rise in relevance to his 1993 solo debut, The Greatest Living Englishman. A combination of re-recorded Cleaners tracks and fresh material, the album was produced by XTC bandmate Andy Partridge, and was largely tracked in his shed using then-new digital equipment. The end product, though comparatively lo-fi, is a cohesive and enjoyable listen front to back. And as a bonus, it includes one of my favorite Christmas songs that maybe 20 people have ever heard, Christmas in Suburbia. The album's a great introduction to an underrated talent who will undoubtedly be covered again on this channel. Go give it a listen.
Going home for Christmas in Suburbia.
Before playing Pierce Hawthorne on Community and making it unclear where actors stopped and characters started, Chevy Chase was the face of the middle-class American dad who masks his ever-expanding anger and anxiety with the demeanor of a man who really needs that promotion.
I gotta be crazy. I'm on a pilgrimage to see a moose.
Christmas Vacation was the first in National Lampoon's Griswold series I ever saw, and like many comedies I saw in my youth, I was probably a little too young for it at the time, filled with as many jokes that I found funny as it was ones I'd only get with age. One thing I knew right away though, side notes are cool, a fact I'm reminded of every time I hear that one Hawaiian Christmas song. Jokes aside, the movie holds up very well in my opinion, juggling sharper riffs with slapstick and sentimentality that I really miss from that decade, and I find it every bit as cozy as Talking Planets, Grown Men in Tights, and Air Rifles for Kids. So turn on a fake fire, open up a gross-ass box of eggnog, and give it a rewatch if you haven't already.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Kiss my ass. Kiss his ass. Kiss your ass. Happy Hanukkah.
For many, Christmas is a time of comfort, and nothing's more comfortable than a reliable trip down memory lane. Rankin Bass and Charlie Brown are the true low-budget OGs of the art form, but in the decades since, the amount of qualifying TV has stacked higher and higher. Pretty much any show that lasted long enough on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network were given a full half-hour holiday special. And hell, on top of having yearly seasonal episodes, the very first episode of The Simpsons was a holiday story.
And what would you like, little boy? You're not really a Santa, Tubby. Why, you little... No, Homer.
But hop to the internet age and you've got a similar trend that's just as cozy and comforting, for me at least. I already talked about Destroying Little Panda Fighter from IHE, my fondness for AVGN and Quentin Reviews is obvious to anyone with eyes, but in the end, I think the crown for my favorites in this alternative space goes to Homestar Runner.
What?
Their non-denominational Decemberween specials put a sassy spin on the TV schmaltz of yesteryear, in that one-of-a-kind style from the Brothers Chaps.
What? The Deep Impact DVD? You got me this for like the last 3 years, man!
On my recent trip to Serbia, I watched 3 movies back-to-back on the plane, all for the first time. I started with Judas and the Black Messiah, which was a bit of a mistake on my part, and I ended with Wedding Singer, good palate cleanser, still wanted to break stuff. Between those two was Funny Pages, one of the nicest surprises that I've had in a while, in that it starts out quite nice itself before... Now, I'm not going to spell out exactly what happens beyond the gist. A suburban teen obsessed with art and comics drops out of school to pursue the romantic bohemian dream of being a self-made artist. On paper, tone, casting, and style, it's the kind of movie I would have watched in my teens and gone, oh, hell yeah, dude, he just like me, for real. Except by the end of the damn thing, it's the kind of movie I wish I had seen at that age, so I was ready for what was actually ahead of me. Complete with economic anxiety, narcissism, and every flavor of neurodivergence under the sun. Also, it takes place at Christmas time. When? I'll leave it at that. If you're looking for something different, this should do it. Just go in with one in the bag. You're gonna need it.
Yeah, but he failed with soap.
It's safe to say that there's no shortage of holiday music, which can be summed up as 24 trad pop standards and a few dozen covers of each one. For my fellow garage rock addicts, though, it can be tricky to find stuff that doesn't just sound like it rolled out of Hot Topic's Nightmare Before Christmas aisle. Enter this obscure 60s long play collab by proto-punk outfit The Sonics, The Wailers, and The Galaxies. Answers to the British invasion of the 60s, they dish up an open-fire energy that's lacking this time of year. Of course, for those who want something fresher, I also recommend 2 Christmas EPs by Dr. Dog, a group who's reverent to this strain of American rock while infusing it with their own modern indie sensibilities. I've actually put these tracks and many more into a playlist called A Chillosaurus Christmas on Spotify. If you want something that you can put on shuffle that'll scratch every itch you might have as a Christmas enjoyer while not being as samey as some fogey radio station, consider this my gift to you.
I hope you enjoy them and I hope that you have a peaceful holiday.
As I like to cover pretty often on this channel, we live in the world of the one-man show, an age where dreamers with MacBooks are able to make hit singles or entire albums from the comfort of their bedroom. That said, disciples of this modern practice would still do well to study their ancestors' efforts in multi-track musicianship. One of my favorites in this category is none other than Electric Light Orchestra founder Roy Wood, whose solo debut Boulders turned 50 this past year. Even though it was recorded at major studios with a couple extra hands at the board, a majority of the production and playing was done by Wood himself. The result is a genre-hopping tribute to every flavor of music that he's ever appreciated, from old-school rock and roll and country to contemporary folk and psychedelia of the time. Even within these pastiches, it's packed with a unique character, made possible by crafty studio effects and obscure instruments that Roy picked up at secondhand shops. Pull it up where you can and enjoy a cult classic from a godfather of orchestral pop rock. Roy's your boy. Smash Brothers, Boomer Pop, Esoterica. I live for this shit. In 1993, I was born. Woof. No. Meanwhile, in Dayton, Ohio, a gladiator turned wizard conjured white-hot discs of pure energy using ramshackle tools. Alchemic statements in a decade-long struggle to reclaim his own destiny. One such totem told the naysayers where they could shove it with the might of champions past. Before cascading into a noisy vortex of discombobulation and sending off those who listened with the final bombardment of mockery, as to say, yes, this is all quite silly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Bruised and fatigued, synapses fried, your senses shocked into their absolute maximum, do you run from this burst of madness or turn to the mystic sorcerer himself and say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" Business is good for human amusements at hourly rates.
What the f*** are you talking about, man?
Fret not, my little pretties, I'm nowhere near close to done with these cats. All in due time. I know we live in an age where you're more likely to hear some schmuck whose career peaked when he co-starred in Joe Dirt sing a song about listening to Sweet Home Alabama. Itself a reaction to Neil Young criticizing the culture and ignorance of southern states that's ultimately been repurposed into an incessant anthem. But allow me to scrub all this cancerous nonsense off for a far more pressing matter. The matter of Leonard Skinner being f***ing awesome. They crystallized the sound of harder American country rock, embraced the outlaw life more authentically than most who came after them, and most importantly, made some incredible music. Their self-titled album is a stone-cold classic of '73, balancing tender balladry and rocking jams with stellar musicianship. For me, Simple Man is the ultimate ode to being a humble and reasonable fellow that Mom would be proud of. And Freebird is Freebird. Yeah, I know. Play Freebird! A parody of the joke, but under that grime is a song that's irrefutably one of the greatest of all time. Hi, I'm Nooski, and if you don't like Freebird, then f*** you. Happy 50th. If the Grand Hour was a twisted State of the Union, the arrival of an immortal vampire on Titus before he wished he was a giant, here's instead a spell cast by way of drunken Beatles tapes. A burst of manic schoolyard electricity whose spark yields a static airplane jive. Pulitzer, please. You're still getting nothing out of me. No details for you about who or why or when. That's chump sh**. Well, alright, fine, maybe a little who. There's a little who, right next to the little who. And the little who. Anyway, this is a great listen that goes by like that. Only problem, it's a little hard to come by outside of the odd YouTube upload or expensive eBay listing, which is why I've taken the liberty of sequencing a Spotify playlist off of last year's release Scalping the Guru, which combined these catchy bops with those of 3 sister releases. Of course, if you've got half an hour to kill, by all means, just play that. But if you've got a little under 11, this will give you more than enough zest for the day. A jump start, if you will, that I will gladly watch. Getting ahead of myself. Play it loud, damn it. A few years back, I briefly reviewed the Stones' acclaimed 1971 album Sticky Fingers. Earlier this year, I was gifted a treasure trove of secondhand vinyls from friend of the channel and visual artist Ollie Wobbles. Go check out his Etsy, by the way. His specialty is psychedelic pet portraits. Anyway, though, among a dozen or so absolute gems in these boxes was none other than...
It's a video, so you can do whatever you want.
I've always wondered whose pants these are. I hope, Keith, I know it's me.
Upon further research, the identity of the gentleman who posed for this Warhol-produced cover remains a mystery. In any case, though, between the strikingly framed crotch shot and functional zipper, it's cool to finally have an iconic piece of rock history on top of owning a superb Rolling Stones record. Now for the moment of truth, I doubt there's anything too seedy under here, given that it was released for public Ollie, I swear to God, if this was you. Vampire on Titus was a record made between 2 masterpieces of 90s indie rock. Yeah, I'm dropping the bit for this one. And for a group so often associated with DIY production and weirder sound effects, this album leans a bit harder into both of those facets of this band. Still, if you stick with it, maybe give it a few listens, there's a genuine timelessness on display. One that makes me such a die-hard fan of this body of work. A lyrical stream of consciousness that evokes life in the Midwest as much as it does psychedelic folklore, the tin can acoustics of the basements the songs were tracked in, the synergy of the band's many influences from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it all just feels feels good, and knowing the year that it came out was also the year that I came out of what? I'll tell you when you're older. Makes my brain etch this hissy 4-track tape into the home movies in my head. Times long gone, friends whose paths have diverted away from mine, of dreams that I carry with me to the very moment I'm recording this. Give it a chance, even if it's a little jarring at first. There's magic to be found here. By the way, I'm sick. Thank God I'm done.
That's some silly bastard.
Hey there, thank you for making it to the end of this upload. I want to round this up to a nice even 1 hour and 20 minutes, if I can. So I'm going to find like an old guitar recording or something on my phone and add some reverb to it to close out the upload. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for the viewership and the support. Love you guys.